You took 1 minute from them. It's actually 7 minutes now. We said 8. That's okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala thumma amma ba'd. So today, inshallah, will be our last day discussing zakat. So congratulations. Because we're done not only with zakat, we're done with the fiqh of worship. That's huge. That's almost half of the fiqh. So, alhamdulillah. Then, inshallah, next time we will start with the fiqh of financial transactions. Sometimes people call it fiqh of commerce. It's about money anyway. It's about money. So, just encourage you. And then afterwards, inshallah, there will be the fiqh of family. And then, Yeah, we should. We'll start with the fiqh of inheritance. Between fiqh of financial transactions and fiqh of family, fiqh of inheritance belongs to both. Because it's about family and it is about money, so it comes in the middle. So we'll do fiqh of inheritance after fiqh of financial transactions, and then fiqh of family. And then after the fiqh of family, we will do, foods and, oaths and vows and all of those things. And then we will do the fiqh of judiciary, witnesses and judgment and so on. But today, inshallah, we will finish the last chapter, which is those who are ineligible for zakat, or those who may not receive zakat, those who may not be given of the zakat, because they are not eligible to receive the zakat. Before that, we did not finish last time the chapter on those who are eligible to receive zakat. But we did talk about the 8 different categories or 8 different types of eligible zakat recipients. Remember them? Do you remember them? إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. So the 8 categories, we've gone over them, we've discussed them in some detail. So we will not repeat that, but they are the poor and the needy, the fuqara and the masakin, the poor and the very poor and the poor, very poor and poor. The cutoff that the Hanbalis use for this is basically to have, means sufficient for half of your needs. Your means are sufficient for half of your needs. If your means are sufficient for half of your needs or more, but not sufficient for all of your needs, you are miskin. If your needs are not even sufficient, means you are not even sufficient for half of your needs, you are faqir, very poor. So very poor and poor, these are the first 2 types. And then fuqara and masakin والعاملين عليها are the zakat collectors. وفي الرقاب والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب الغارمين في سبيل الله وابن السبيل. مؤلفة قلوبهم are those whose hearts are to be reconciled. Of الرقاب, to release to free emancipation, for emancipation. But it is also to free the captives. So for emancipation of slaves and for freeing the captives. والغارمين, and those who are in debt, to pay off their debts. وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل, in the cause of Allah, and for the wayfarer. And those are the 8 different types. They make it a point to say that none is eligible beside those 8 different types. But sometimes in contemporary fiqh, we've discussed, some other sort of eligible recipients of zakah, and we said that da'wah is fi sabilillah. That's not a traditional position. That's a more modern position. But it is not in conflict with clear-cut text of Revelation, and it is not in conflict with a clear-cut consensus either. Then the Sheikh said, ويجوز دفعها إلى واحد منهم لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أمر بني زريق بدفع صدقتهم إلى سلمة بن صخر وقال لقبيصة أقم يا قبيصة حتى تأتينا الصدقة فنأمر لك بها. It is permissible to pay it to only one of them. It's permissible to pay it to only one of them. Meaning, it is. Why does he want to say this? Because in those manuals, they try to be very brief, but also every word they say, it's meaningful and relevant. He wants to say we're not like the Shafi'is. We don't say that you have to give it to the 8 different categories. For us to give it to one of the 8 categories would be sufficient. And that's the position of the majority. That's Hanafi, Maliki, and Hanbali. The Shafi'is are the ones who said that you have to divide your zakat between the 8 different categories. The Hanbalis do maintain that it would be preferable if they are around, if they are available, that you divide it between them. So that you give some of your zakat to this category, some of your zakat to that category, and so on, if they are all around. And that certainly would be preferable so that we are not, as a community, neglectful of any of those different eligible recipients of zakat. So you are not giving all of your zakat to those whose hearts are to be reconciled and ignoring the most important, the very poor and the poor, the faqir and the miskeen. Or you're not giving all of your zakat to this and not that. When they're all available, it's preferable that you divide your zakat. But having said that, it is not required. And having said that, sometimes when you feel that there is a need that was not met, not fulfilled, everybody gives their zakat to the poor, fuqara and masakeen around you. And you do want to give your zakat to someone else because it's an unfulfilled need. Then you can. And you can give all of your zakat to just one category. Although it is preferred. But certainly for a community, it would not be acceptable of us at the community level. That's why zakat organizations need to be even-handed. At the community, because the zakat organizations take the place of the imam nowadays. They are collecting the zakat from us. That's a huge responsibility. That's actually a responsibility of the imam and the deputies of the imam. But it is the responsibility as far as they are the deputies of the imam. But it is the responsibility of al-Khalifa, the imam. And certainly, if there is no Khalifa or there is no one Khalifa, then it becomes the responsibility of the whatever president, or leader of a particular land or a particular country. And when there is no one taking care of it, then the responsibility moves to the community. And then the community will need to organize itself. And it is extremely important for us to be respectful of our institutions, because we will never have thriving institutions, and we will never be able to institutionalize our work as minorities unless we are respectful of the institutions that we have, the organizations that we have, the main Islamic organization. Whether they deal with zakat, they deal with politics, whatever grassroots activism, this, that, we have to be respectful, and we have to, they deserve our ongoing dua. They deserve our ongoing supplication. Whether or not you agree with what they do, certainly if they completely sabotage Islamic values for whatever reasons, then there's there are 3 different steps. The first step is أَقِيلُ ذَوِي الْهَيْئَاتِ عَثَرَاتِهِمْ. First step is pardon and forgive and be lenient with the people in leadership, because they are basically entrusted with making decisions, and they have to make decisions all the time. And whatever decisions they will make, some people will like those decisions and some people will not. Do we ever agree on anything? You will not agree with yourself sometimes. You change your mind. So you have to have this understanding. So أَقِيلُ ذَوِي الْهَيْئَاتِ عَثَرَاتِهِمْ, be lenient and forgiving with the people in leadership, because they are under a lot of pressure. They have to make decisions. Be understanding. And then the second, if their mistakes are bad, then the second would be ad-din al-nasiha. Deen is about nasiha. Deen is about goodwill. But that means, also advice. It means to advise your fellow brother or sister when they need your advice, to extend your nasiha to them. And then if they persist in their own ways and they're heedless and they're not receptive and they're arrogant, then it would be time for تأمرنا بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. You command that which is good and you forbid that which is evil. But take your time. There are steps. There are steps. It's like a 3-tiered process. Anyway, so the zakat organizations are entrusted with distribution, the collection, distribution of zakah. It's an enormous responsibility. They have to be very careful about it. We have to always remind them to be very careful about it, but we also should respect them, and we should not spread rumors about them or, be particularly critical of them. Have mercy on ibadullah, on the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah have mercy on you. So, but they do want to be careful. They do want to prioritize al-fuqara wal-masakin, because that is what the Quran and Sunnah prioritize, the fuqara wal-masakin. They do want to be even-handed. They do want to distribute the zakah among the 8 categories when they are all available. So the Shaykh said, وَيَجُوزُ دَفْعُهَا إِلَى وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمْ. You understand what this means. In the majority said you don't, as an individual in particular, you do not need to divide your zakah between all 8 categories, although it is preferable when they are available and you have the means to pay to all of them. And the proof that he cited here, and this is particularly different about this manual, because Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah cites a hadith in this manual, which is not usual for manuals. Not all the time, but often he cites them for their authority. He said in the muqaddimah, in the introduction, and for the blessing of the words of the Prophet. So he says here, because since the Prophet ﷺ instructed Bani Zurayq to pay it to Salam ibn Sakhr, so he instructed a tribe, or a clan, to pay it to one person. So it's okay to pay it to one category. To pay it to Salam ibn Sakhr, and he said to Qabisa, stay here until the charity or zakat comes to us, and then we will give it to you. It's not a very strong proof, because he did not tell him that we will only give you from it. But it may, the apparent meaning may be that when the zakat comes, we'll give it all to you. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It's not really decisive. But again, at the same time, there is no strong proof that the Shafi'is could use to say that we must divide it between the 8 different categories. These are all different eligible recipients that Allah told us of. So if we give it to one of the eligible recipients that Allah told us of, it should be fine. And then he said, وَيُدْفَعُ إِلَى الْفَقِيرِ وَالْمِسْكِينِ مَا تَتِمُّ بِهِ كِفَايَتُهُ وإلى العامل قدر عمالته وعمالته وإلى المؤلف ما يحصل به تأليفه وإلى المكاتب والغارم ما يقضي به دينه وإلى الغازي ما يحتاج إليه لغزوه وإلى ابن السبيل ما يوصله إلى بلده ولا يزاد أحد منهم على ذلك. Okay, so the poor and needy are to be given what is sufficient for their needs. We went over this last time, so we will not repeat it in detail. Sufficient over their needs, the Hanafis said up to the zakat threshold, so no one will be getting more than $3,500 nowadays because that's the zakat threshold, that is the nisab. The Shafi'is said for their entire life, to give them enough to, and we said that we could use this basically when it comes to tools of production, to give them the tool that will enable them to be self-sufficient for the rest of their lives. But the Shafi'i said to give them whatever is, if you have it. Certainly the Shafi'i is not, it's not like they're not making sense. It's like, if you have it, give it to them, give them enough to be sufficient for their entire life. The Malikis and Hanbalis said that since zakat is an annual function, you give them enough for 1 year. Zakat is an annual function. So you give them enough for 1 year. That's what the Malikis and Hanbalis said. Most of the contemporary scholars who are not particularly restricted, most of the madhabi scholars that are not particularly too restricted to their madhab, they do take that middle position, which is 1 year, because it seems to be a good position. They only apply that the Shafi'i position. They only apply the Shafi'i position when someone really can be given the tools of their profession, or if they're craftsmen, persons. You don't want you want to use non-sexist. I wanted to say men, but then if there are persons who have like particular professions or crafts or something of that nature, you do want to give them the tools that will enable them to basically be self-sufficient for the rest of their lives. And contemporary scholars also will say there will be room to use the Hanafi position when there is scarcity of resources, scarcity of zakat resources. Then when you have scarcity of zakat resources, you instruct your zakat distributors to give only up to the nisab, so that we could distribute the zakat on all the deserving recipients. So you could use all of the different positions. Like if you and you need insight in this case. So these are the different positions in the madhab. You need a little bit of wisdom and insight to be able to use them. Yes?
Lump sum or payments?
Lump sum or payments, a lump sum. No, you can't give payments unless you're given payments from your advanced zakat. If you're given payments from next year, if you want to give payments to the poor, give them from the next year's zakat. You cannot give them payments from the zakat that's already due, that from last year's zakat. You cannot give them payments because this is money that is not yours anymore. It has to be delivered to the deserving recipients. Give it. Now, as a zakat, we talked about this last time, so we will not repeat it. Whether the zakat organizations are entitled, they have the authority, they have the power to invest the money of the zakat so that they can have ongoing income for the deserving recipients. And that is certainly not something that you will find in one of the classical four madhahib, but that is the contemporary fatwa of Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islamī, the International Islamic Fiqh Academy of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And we do respect our institutions, we do respect our majama, even when they make mistakes or blunders sometimes. You do continue to respect them. So you continue to respect them because we have to maintain order, and we have to maintain those institutions, and have to maintain their authority in the community, so that anyway, so that's what Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami said, that the organizations can invest, and in this case they can give payments to people. But for you as an individual, if you want to give payments to your relatives or to your whatever recipients of zakat, because you don't trust to give them a lump sum of money because they are not particularly prudent, financially prudent, then give them from next year's zakat, not from this year's zakat. And in this case, you could give them payments and subtract all of the payments from next year's zakat. Okay, so, Allah barik fikum. And then he said, and the worker, so the poor and the needy, they'll be given whatever is sufficient for them. And the worker is to be given fair recompense or compensation for his work. And we did talk about this, العاملين عليها. You could give them big salaries. If they have the PhD in economics or PhD in management or something, you give them whatever they, market value, fair market value. عاملين عليها. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, he said, and those whose hearts is to be reconciled, or whose heart is to be reconciled, is to be given, and he whose heart is to be reconciled is to be given what will reconcile him or her. So you just مُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, you could give them a lot of money to reconcile their hearts. And we talked about who al-mu'allafa qulubuhum are, and we talked about how al-Malikis and Hanbalis said this still includes non-Muslims, and the Hanafis and Shafi'is said it does not. And then he says, and the contracted slave and the debtor are to be given what they need to pay off what is due on them. The contracted slave and the debtor to be given what they need to pay off what is due on them. Contracted slave is al-mukatib or al-mukatab. You could say both al-mukatib or al-mukatab in the active or passive voice. That's the contracted slave. So for emancipation, give them what they need for emancipation. The debtor, you give them what they need to pay off their debt. And then he said, and the fighter is to be given what he needs for fighting, and the wayfarer is to be given enough to enable him to return to his homeland. We said the wayfarer, if this is the destination, and this is the starting point, the ending point, and you're stuck here, if your safar, if your travel is for a need, we give you enough to go to your destination and come back to your homeland. If your safar is not for a need, if your travel is not for a need, just for tourism, we give you enough to go back to your homeland. If your safar is for ma'asiyah, disobedience, we just leave you. But the caveat here is, if you repented, we give you money to go back. Okay. So then he said, وَلَا يُزَادُ أَحَدٌ مِّنْهُمْ عَلَى ذَلِكَ, and none of them may be given more than that, because we have finite resources and infinite need, or almost infinite need. But we have finite resources, so you don't get. But there is an intricacy here that is, something important here to point out, which is what? Which is that 4 of these different types, Allah used different sort of expressions when he talked about the 8 different types. Allah said, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ, okay, right? Lil, two means what? Lil, two means transfer of ownership. Wal masakin, okay, that is the same thing. There's just wow. Wal mu'allafati wal amilina alayha, wal amilina alayha. Wal mu'allafati qulubuhum. The first 4 types. So very poor, zakat collectors, those whose hearts are to be reconciled. It is li, two. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَفِي, not li, fi, فِي الرِّقَابِ, in riqab, in the slaves. In means what here? I'll tell you. فِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ, and the debtors. وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, in the cause of Allah. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. The scholars deduced from this that there is transfer of ownership here. So if you give more, the surplus, they get to keep. They get to keep the surplus. Let us say you give them more than their immediate needs. They get to keep the surplus. Those 4 types. Those 4 types, they don't get to keep the surplus. Why? Because this is zakat ashkhas, and this is zakat masalih. This basically, this is transfer of ownership for those people, and this is spending on the cause here, not the person, the cause of emancipation, the cause of paying the debt off, the cause of, this particular military expedition. Or now we are adding to it da'wah, the cause of him going back home. You give him enough money so that he goes back home. They don't get to keep the surplus. Those people get to keep the surplus. Because when you give them zakat, it is transfer of ownership. It is not zakat for the particular cause, it is zakat to the particular individual. Okay. Then he said, وَخَمْسَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ لَا يَأْخُذُونَ إِلَّا مَعَ الْحَاجَةِ وهم الفقير والمسكين والمكاتب أو المكاتب والغارم لنفسه وابن سبيل. 5 types of them do not take anything except in the case of need. They are the poor, the needy, the contracted slave, the debtor for himself, and the wayfarer. وأربعة يجوز الدفع إليهم مع الغنى وهم العامل والمؤلف والغازي والغارم لإصلاح ذات البين. For 4 types of them, it is permissible to give them from the zakat, even if they are well off, even if they're rich, even if they're wealthy. They take the zakat. They are the zakat collector, the one to be reconciled, the fighter and the debtor who incurred the debt to reconcile disputants, to settle a dispute between 2 disputant parties. Why do we give them when they are rich? Because why are we giving them? Who gets the zakat when they are rich? 1, 2. Why are we giving the zakat collectors when they are rich? Because we're giving them for their work. This is not zakat for them. It's not like they are. It's not like they're needy, and then you're out of the kindness of your heart, you're giving them money. You're giving them zakat because of their work. You want them to move from being the CEO of their whatever company, Fortune 500 company, to basically administer the zakat for your community. You give them for their work. So you give them what they need. Well, not what they need. You give them the proper compensation. Why الْمُؤَلَّفَ قُلُوبُهُم, those whose hearts are to be reconciled. Because you're giving them to reconcile their hearts. That is the purpose. For the benefit, for the interest of the community. For the interest of the community. So even if they're rich, you give them to reconcile their hearts, as the Prophet ﷺ did. Al-Aqra' ibn Habis was probably not poor. And then, who else gets money when they are rich? Fi sabilillah, which is the fighter in the cause of Allah. Because you're supporting their mission. You are supporting their mission. You're supporting the mission. Likewise, if you will hire someone like a youth director, and you decided to give the youth director, you decided that this is part of da'wah, and you've decided that you will use your zakat money or part of your zakat money to support your da'wah or your organization, you will give them for even if they're wealthy, because you're giving them for the work. Okay, so fi sabilillah, fighters and whatever. Then who else gets the zakat when they are wealthy? Al-Gharimin, yeah. There are 2 different types of Gharimin. The debtors who incur the debt for their own needs, they will get the zakat because of the need, only if they are needy. For their own needs, they will get the zakat if they are unable to pay off the debt because of their lack of means. So that is why he said 5 and 4, because the zakat collectors are 8. How come he made 9 out of them? Because he divided the gharimin into 2 types. People who incurred debt for their own benefit, we will not give them unless they are needy. unless they can't pay off the debt. People who incur the debt for the benefit of the community. So to settle a dispute, people, are arguing, like two people are arguing over $5,000. Here, take it. Stop arguing. So these people incur the debt what for the benefit of the community. That's why we give them, even if they're rich, because we tell them, you've done a good job. We will also contribute to this with you. We'll not give them the whole thing, but we'll give them, we can give them the whole thing, to be honest. But the idea here is, if you did this and out of the kindness of your heart and out of chivalry and gallantry and so on, we will allow you to be chivalrous, but we'll help you out. So that is why these people get the zakat. There is one type that the Sheikh did not mention. There is one thing that the Sheikh did not mention. He said he did not mention Ibn. There is a little subtlety here when it comes to Ibn Sabil, because Ibn Sabil may be rich at home. The wayfarer may have money at home, may have assets at home, but now he has no access to the assets. So although he's rich at home, he's not rich here. He's not rich now. So we'll give him money to go back. Nowadays, people have credit cards and so on, and that particular scenario is a little bit, less common nowadays. Yes?
When we pay out of the zakat, community zakat, for example, العاملين عليها, so that's his income. So in essence, he is then pays also zakat on his income.
Yes, he will pay zakat from that income.
As an income, because he's earning his income now. That's his income. So the community, out of the pot, they're paying this person zakat to run let's say the zakat.
Yeah.
So, but that's his income now. So I would say.
But there is no zakat on income. The zakat will be on savings. So yeah, if he saves, whatever he saves, he will need to pay zakat out of this. Yeah. Okay. So now the final chapter, and I may take 5 or 10 more minutes if you allow me more, or just to finish. The final chapter, he says, باب من لا يجوز دفع الزكاة إليه, those who may not be given zakat, those who are ineligible for zakat. Sheikh said, لا تحل الصدقة لغني ولا لقوي مكتسب. It's not permissible for charity, here meaning zakat, to be given to someone who's wealthy, strong, and capable of earning. قوي مكتسب, strong and capable of earning, because you could be strong but not capable of earning. And that is an important concept to hear. Not everyone who is strong is capable of earning. You may not find a job. Particularly that work that is more pertinent to our conditions nowadays than to their conditions back then. Because back then, most of the work was physical work. And if you're strong and well-built and so on, you'll probably have a job. You can probably go out to, chop wood and bring it back and sell it and stuff like this. So nowadays, you could look very good, you could be well dressed, and you don't have a job. You know how quick it takes a person here in America to go from like middle or upper middle class to homeless. It could be very quick. So you could look good, but you're still deserving of the zakat. So here he said it's not permissible to be given to someone who's wealthy, strong, and capable of earning, because the Prophet ﷺ said to two people, إن شئتما أعطيتكما, if you desire, I'll give you from it. ولا حظ فيها لغني ولا ذي مرة سوي. But there is no share in this, wholesome, halal share in this for someone who is wealthy or someone who is the mirratin sawaya, meaning well built, strong, capable, and so on, and have the ability to earn, have the capacity, the potency to earn money, can find a job. Something that is to be said, that is important to be said here, is that the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith reported by Bukhari and Muslim from Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, وَمَنْ يَأْخُذُ مِنْهُ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍ كَانَ كَمَنْ يَأْكُلُ وَلَا يَشْبَعُ وَيَأْتِي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ شَهِيدًا عَلَيْهِ. Whoever takes from it without being entitled to it, his parable is like someone who eats but never gets satiated. But never gets satiated. That's a very bad parable. And on the day of judgment, this money will be a witness against him. On the day of judgment, this money will be a witness against them. So it is important that we have lying to attain benefits you're not entitled to, whether you're lying to an individual, lying to an organization, lying to the authorities, the country, lying to obtain benefits you're not entitled to is haram, and this money will come to be a witness against you on the day of judgment. Lying is haram to obtain benefits. Okay. Then the Shaykh said, وَلَا تَحِلُّ لِآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ وَهُمْ بَنُو هَاشِمْ وَمَوَالِيهِمْ. It is also not permissible for the household of Muhammad, which is Banu Hashim and their freed slaves. There is some controversy about whether it would be permissible if they're poor and they are not getting money from other resources. But the Prophet ﷺ particularly wanted to basically say to them that I don't want you involved in this. When Al-Fadl ibn al-Abbas came to him and he asked to be one of the amilin alayha, one of the zakat collectors, he said to them that إِنَّهَا لَا تَحِلُّ لِمُحَمَّدٍ وَلَا لِآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. It is not permissible for Muhammad or the family of Muhammad. He did not want them to be involved in this. He wanted to keep his family away from the collection of the zakat. That's part of قُلْ مَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْرٍ. I don't seek any reward from you or any compensation for the delivering of the message. Not compensation to receive directly, nor compensation to be given to my household. Then the Sheikh said, وَلَا يَجُوزُ دَفْعُهَا إِلَى الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَإِنْ عَلَوْا وَلَا إِلَى الْوَلَدِ وَإِنْ سَفَلْ وَلَا مَنْ تَلْزَمُهُ مُؤْنَتُهُ or مَؤُونَتُهُ. It is not permissible to pay it to one's parents and their forebears and sisters, to one's children and their progeny, and those one is required to support. And that will be discussed in the family law in detail, but we did cover this, and we did say last time that the Hanafis and the Hanbalis extended this beyond the Hanafis, consider everybody who is mahram, even if he is, not a warith, not an inheritor, to be part of the family and to be deserving of maintenance outside of the zakat, that you ought to support them, so you can't give them your zakat. If you ought to support them, you can't give them your zakat, because otherwise you're giving the zakat to yourself, because you're the one who's obliged to support them. The Hanbalis said it is the ancestors and descendants and anyone that you will inherit from, and anyone that you will inherit from. Because Allah said in the Quran, وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضَعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَ وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And it is upon the one to whom the child was born, or for whom the child was born, it's upon the father to sustain them, and بالمعروف, within reason. And then Allah said, وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ, and binding on the inheritor the same, to support that newborn child, if the newborn child does not have money. So then the Malikis said it's only for the parents and the children, and the Shafi'is said it is only for the ancestors and descendants. Certainly the wife, the spouse, is by agreement. And also the husband. You don't give your zakat to your husband, or even though you could give your husband to your charity. You could give sadaqah to your husband, but you don't give zakat to your husband. Because it comes back to you. You know? But you can give him charity, you know, non-obligatory sadaqah. Finally, he said, وَلَا إِلَى كَافِرٍ, and it's not permissible to the unbelievers. And we did say before that, you know, why is this? Why is this? And we said before, if the Prophet ﷺ said, فِي كُلِّ كَبِدٍ رَطْبَةٍ صَدَقَةٍ, there is a reward for kindness you extend it to every living creature, whether it is Muslim or not Muslim. There's kind. This applies to the non-mandatory, non-obligatory zakat. Give as much as you can, because there is always room to give aside from the zakat. Non-obligatory sadaqah, give as much as you can to everyone, including non-Muslims. There is, that's what it means. But why is it that the zakat is limited to the Muslims, aside from those whose hearts are to be reconciled? Aside from those whose hearts are to be reconciled, because we said they could be non-Muslims according to the Malikis and Hanbalis, not according to the Hanafis and Shafi'is. Why is that distinction? Because zakat is meant to be an internal system. Those who are obliged to pay it when they are rich are the ones who are entitled to take it when they are poor. Does that make sense? Is that fair? Fair. But then outside of that closed system of support, then non-obligatory charity, give as much as you want to everybody, including certainly non-Muslims. فأما صدقة التطوع فيجوز دفعها إلى هؤلاء وإلى غيرهم. As for voluntary charity, it may be given to such people and to others. As for voluntary charity, it may be given to such people and to others. ولا يجوز دفع الزكاة إلا بنية إلا أن يأخذها الإمام منه قهرا. It is only permissible to pay zakat with an intention, unless the imam or the ruler takes it by force. If the imam takes it by force, do you get rewarded for this? No, you don't. No, you don't. But will you have to pay the zakat another time? No, you don't have to pay it. So it was sufficient for you in ahkam ad-dunya, in the rulings of the dunya, it was sufficient for you. Your zakat has been taken. But if he took it from you by force and you're resentful, you know, there is no niyyat ibadah here. There is no intention of devotion here. And if there is no intention of devotion, how could you get rewarded when you're resentful? It doesn't make any sense. So you're not going to get rewarded, but you will not have to pay the zakat anymore. You're done. Okay? Okay. But then when he says that you have to have an intention, that is why if you pay zakat, if you're walking down the street and you see someone deserving and you give them from your zakat, unless you have that intention, you can't come at the end of the year and say, well, I gave this guy, you know, for $200, and I gave, you know, and one day I wasn't doing this, and then no, that doesn't really work. You have to have the intention here that this is part of your advanced zakat. You know, you went to a fundraiser and you felt sort of like Sheikh Ala As-Sadawi was there or something, and you felt too emotional. And you gave some money, and then you say to yourself at the end of the year, well, you know, on that particular day, I gave this much money. No, it doesn't work this way. Unless you intend to, unless you intend that this is part of your advanced zakah, you should not subtract it from your zakah at the end of the year. It has to have niyyah. Then the Sheikh said, وَإِذَا Actually, we're doing quite well here on the time. The Sheikh said, وَإِذَا دَفَعَ الزَّكَاءَ إِلَى غَيْرِ مُسْتَحَقِّهَا لَمْ تُجْزِهِ إِلَّا الْغَنِيَّ إِذَا ظَنَّهُ فَقِيرًا. If he pays the zakat to someone who does not deserve it, it is not valid, except in the case that it was paid to someone who was well off, but whom he, the donor, thought was poor. Someone who was well off, but the donors thought he was poor or she was poor. So basically, if you give the zakat to someone who is not deserving because of the pedigree or lineage or religion or some other reason, and then you figure out that you gave it to someone who's ineligible, he will tell you you have to give it one more time because you did not investigate properly. But if you give it to someone who's rich and turns out to be poor, he will tell you you don't have to give it again because that is not as clear, that is not as evident as this. You are entitled to having second thoughts about this. This is not Quran or Sunnah. This is basically fiqhi ruling. Is it always clear that someone is not deserving because of the pedigree, for instance, because they are from the family of the Prophet ﷺ? What if you don't know? I mean, during their times, you would have probably known. You know, if you live in a village and there is someone for, you know, that he belongs to the family of the Prophet ﷺ, you would have probably known them. But what if you don't know? So this is subject to deliberation. It's a fiqhi ruling that is subject to deliberation. If someone truly, sincerely did not know and gave the person money thinking that they are deserving, they ended up to not be deserving, you know, because they changed religion. Or because someone came and told you, you know, this guy, you know, he's Muslim, but he's not really Muslim. And then you came to actually to find out that they are not really Muslim. They were talking about, and this is something that we may have more of in the future. So they were talking about the Christian rabbi that Mike Pence invited to, or not Mike Pence, you know, but was with Mike Pence in the same event. And the Jewish community was justifiably offended because, you know, Jews for Jesus is not considered by the Orthodox Jewish community to be Jewish at all. You know, you know, you're Jewish and you're saying Jesus is our Savior. It's just what kind of Jew are you? So, but it is not impossible. You know, it is actually hermeneutically more plausible to have Christian imams in the future than to have Christian rabbis, because the Quran is more open to this. You know, it grandifies Jesus justifiably, peace be upon him, to an extent that's quite obvious in the Quran. So to have in the future Christian imams is not really that unlikely. But anyway, but that would be obvious. But it is not always obvious, you know, it is not as obvious as it was in their times. So it's not just richness and poverty. There may be other ineligible recipients that you may give money to, sincerely thinking that they are deserving recipients. They turn out to not be deserving recipients. I personally think that what Allah will hold you by is your diligence in investigation and the sincerity of your cause. sincerity of cause, diligence in investigation. If you fulfill the two requirements, I think you should be fine in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's not the madhab anyway. The madhab is that, if you, other than richness and poverty, if you give to someone who's not deserving, not knowing that they're not deserving, you still have to give it again. That's the madhab. But that's subject to a sort of further investigation. And that's it, mashallah, alhamdulillah. We are done with the chapter of zakat, and we are done with the fiqh of worship. Alhamdulillah.
We need a pizza party.
And then